Welcome to The Explainer. Have you ever felt that pressure? You know, the one to be perfect. So many of us live with this little voice inside, a critic, really, that tells us we have to be flawless in everything we do. It's just this constant pressure, a whisper that says any little mistake is a total failure. So today, we're going to explore this relentless quest for perfection. It's something so many of us are on, right? And it's often driven by this need to present a flawless life to the world. But we're going to look at it a little differently, not as a strength, but as a trap. A trap that can really hold us back from real growth and from real happiness.
So, let's start by looking at the cost of all this. What is the real price we end up paying for trying to be so flawless all the time?
You can see here, there's this huge gap between what perfectionism promises and what it actually delivers. We think it's going to give us success and approval and this feeling of control. But so often, the chase itself leaves us with the exact opposite: anxiety, stress, and just this constant heavy feeling that we're just not good enough. In this internal pressure, it has a really profound psychological cost. It slowly erodes our mental health, and it can trap us in what psychologists call black and white thinking. It's this idea that you're either a complete success or a total failure. There's just no room for anything in between. And that fear of not measuring up, it can make us so afraid to take risks. It can even cause us to pull away from the very people who love and support us. Researchers like Brené Brown have explored this so beautifully. This whole pursuit, it isn't really about being our best selves, it's almost always rooted in a really deep fear of shame and judgment. We have this belief that if we can just be perfect, then we can avoid being criticized. But that shield we carry, it's so heavy. And in the end, it's the very thing that keeps us from truly connecting with others. Okay, but the good news is there is a path to freedom from this trap. And it doesn't begin with some grand gesture. It starts with a very quiet, very powerful shift in our own mindset. And it's so important to understand this. Self-acceptance isn't about giving up. It's not about lowering our standards. It's about something else entirely. It's about seeing ourselves clearly and fully, with a really realistic view of our talents and our limitations, and just being okay with that. It's about finding a sense of peace and satisfaction with who we are right now, in this moment. And you can see here what that really looks like in practice. People who cultivate self-acceptance, they're just more at peace. Not because they're perfect, of course not, but because they've stopped fighting with themselves. They've learned to acknowledge all the different parts of who they are, the good and the not so good, without all that harsh judgment. So the natural question is, how do we get there? You know, how do we go from just understanding this idea to actually practicing it in our daily lives? Well, the key lies in cultivating something called self-compassion. And at its heart, self-compassion is actually quite simple. It's really just about treating yourself with the same kindness, the same warmth that you would so easily offer to a good friend who was struggling. It's about learning to turn that empathy inward. Researcher Kristen Neff actually breaks it down into these three core parts. So first, there's self-kindness instead of that constant self-judgment. Then there's recognizing our shared common humanity. This is the simple, powerful understanding that everyone fails, everyone suffers. It's what connects us. It doesn't isolate us. And finally, there's mindfulness, just allowing ourselves to notice our painful feelings without getting totally swept away by them. I want you to just take a moment and think about this. Imagine a friend you really care about makes a mistake or feels like a failure. What's your first instinct? You'd probably offer warmth, right? And understanding and support. You would never criticize them in that moment. Now, try to imagine treating yourself that exact same way, applying that same kindness to yourself. That is the heart of self-compassion. It's a practice, not something you perfect, and it can honestly change everything. So what happens when we do this? When we begin to embrace this new way of relating to ourselves, the benefits are, well, they're truly transformative. This is the reward for having the courage to try. For one thing, it can unlock our creativity. When you're no longer paralyzed by the fear of making a mistake, you suddenly give yourself permission to explore, to experiment, to innovate, without demanding that the outcome be perfect. This completely reframes what failure even means. It's no longer some indictment of your worth as a person, it's just data. It becomes a learning opportunity. And that's what fuels real growth and allows for those really groundbreaking ideas to come through. Embracing your own imperfection also has this really beautiful effect on your relationships, because when you can acknowledge your own flaws with kindness, you naturally become more accepting and empathetic toward the flaws in other people.
See, letting go of that constant need to appear perfect, it allows for real vulnerability. And it's in that authentic space, that's where we build the deepest, most genuine connections with other people. They finally get to see the real you.
And finally, self-acceptance builds a foundation of genuine resilience. It dramatically reduces that constant draining anxiety, the kind that comes from chasing an impossible standard of perfection.
This practice, it helps you build an inner strength that is so much more durable than that fragile, heavy shield of perfectionism we talked about. You start to learn how to navigate the inevitable ups and downs of life with a little more calm and a little more emotional balance.
So let's end with this thought. Embracing your imperfection. It isn't about settling for less. It's about freeing yourself from an impossible burden so that you can finally, truly live. So I'll leave you with this question to think about. What becomes possible for you when you're no longer afraid to fail?